Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. There's our friend again, always looking for people who like to draw. I hope he found some. And in this video, we need to talk about how I pulled off another trade. That is right, another big trade in the Swaggle franchise. GM Swaggle making big moves out there. Okay, not really that big of a move, just a small improvement in the collection overall. So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of the trade, how I was able to pull this one off, and more specifically, why I felt like I wanted to make this trade and be at the grade level that I'm in, because in this video, we're going to talk about Census Curve. But before I get into it, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do one of the things I'd appreciate. But let's get into this video here today. Now, like I did in my video yesterday, I talked about being at Cal Comic Con. If you guys don't know, or if you didn't see that video, Cal Comic Con is a comic show here in the Southern California area. A lot of big dealers across the country coming out to the show. A lot of big pocketed collectors spending big money at the show. And it was a really, really good time, a really fun one. Unfortunately, it was only one day long, so I wasn't able to really do much filming overall. You know, it makes it always a little bit hard to kind of create content while also looking for deals, looking for books, trying to hunt as well. So I apologize if you guys were looking forward to seeing some footage there. I will definitely do some content at other shows later on. You know, when we get to the shows that are like the multiple day events, San Diego Comic Con and things like that, I'll definitely shoot some content. And I will, of course, always talk to dealers like I usually do. But in this video, we got to talk about this book that I was able to make a trade for. Now, this was also another book on my wish list for 2023, my upgrade wish list more specifically. And I guess without further ado, let us just jump right into the book. The book I was able to trade for or make an upgrade for with a trade was this book right here, Amazing Spider-Man #6, the first appearance of the Lizard in a CGC 4.5 grade. Now, if you guys remember, I happen to have a 2.5 grade, which again, in this house is totally unacceptable. Not allowed to have 2.5 grades in this house. So I was spending a lot of time trying to make sure that I was able to upgrade this one. No, I'm just kidding. That wasn't the reason why I wanted to upgrade this one. It has more to do with the fact of the census. But I was really, really happy to be able to pull this one off. I was at the show going around to looking at a bunch of the dealers. And on one of the dealers' walls, I had identified that they had this book up there in the 4.5 grade for basically $1,200. That was their sticker price, which I thought was a pretty good deal overall. Maybe a little bit higher than maybe what the record low sale of the year is for this particular book at this grade. But generally speaking, when you factor in like fees and tax and shipping and all that stuff, I mean, roughly $1,200 was, you know, pretty much as good as you can get, at least right now until the market goes to zero tomorrow. So I thought that this was a really good potential, a really good trading partner for this one. And going to the show, I actually brought a bunch of books with me, including my 2.5 of the first appearance of Lizard. And I actually went up to the guy and I talked to him and I said, hey, would you be interested in doing trades? And he was like, well, it depends on, you know, what kind of trade you're talking about. And I just made mention to him, I was like, hey, I actually have a 2.5 first appearance of the Lizard. I'd love to just be able to upgrade if you're willing to, you know, accept the cash difference of values. And he was really, really cool about the situation because, you know, a lot of dealers, when they do trades, will always tell you that they want to make about 10% equity whenever they do a trade. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, generally speaking, the dealer is there to sell the book. You know, the buyer is there to, you know, collect the book. So the dealer wants to make cash. Just doing a lateral move for them, you know, in trading books isn't really something that, you know, is going to benefit them that much, because at the end of the day, they still have to sell that inventory. Now, unless, you know, it's a need for a need, maybe they have certain books or you have certain books that you're trading to them that they actually want because they want to have a more diversified wall. Perhaps they have multiple copies of a single book that they just don't need to have, you know, so that, and that's the one you're trading for. So there are cases and scenarios where, you know, dealers might go one for one, but this guy was really awesome. Now, he did say, he's like, you know, I have to value your book at, you know, kind of the low end of GPA because I gotta know what the liquid value of it was. But luckily for me, I actually knew what kind of the liquid value was for the book. You know, going into the show, I knew that the 2.5 at that point pretty much was sitting around the $700 range. So I came in with expectations of like, okay, he's gonna value it at around $700. I mean, I wouldn't expect more from that. So I did manage my expectations pretty well, and we went on to GPA, we looked at it, you know, we talked about, you know, some of the value ranges for it, and he ended up valuing my book at about, you know, the $700 range. You know, he asked for $1,200. I ended up just, you know, paying him the difference of the $500 price point. and I got this 4.5 grade right there, which is, really awesome. This is a really nice copy overall. Maybe still some, I mean, it does look like the book has been pressed a little bit, but there are some things that could still be cleaned. But kind of shifting gears now to the next part of the video, I did want to talk a little bit about this idea of the census curve. Now, this isn't necessarily something that's like a be-all, end-all rule, or it's not necessarily a silver bullet in determining values and prices of books, but it is something that I have kind of anecdotally noticed, especially if you are somebody who sits and watches tons of auctions time and time again, weekly heritage auctions and things like that. But what you do generally see is that if you can find books that generally speaking are more on the high end of grade volume, you're typically speaking going to be able to mitigate your downside risk by being in that part of the book. And let me kind of really explain what I mean by that. So here is the Amazing Spider-Man #6, of course, the first appearance of Lizard, 2,692 universal copies. And what you see here when I talk about grade curve is basically how many at each grade are on the census. Here at the 8.0 you have 90, here at the 7.5 you have 111, 7.0 you have 185. And what I'm really looking for is what grade point for this book has the most on the census. Well, if you scroll down here to the 4.0 range, you see that the census here is 272. So of all the grade points for this book, it seems like there are the most 4.0s out there. And what I'm basically trying to suggest is that if you guys can identify what grade point for the book you're going after has the highest amount on the census, and you can be above that grade. So in this particular case, if 4.0 has the highest census, you want to get to that 4.5 or higher. That's going to kind of mitigate your risk where, you have all these people who might, want to sell their books coming onto market. I mean, it makes sense, right? At any given moment, on any given day, there's going to be a book up for sale. And typically speaking, if you have a higher census, it's more likely that that one is going to show up. So anecdotally, when you go into heritage auction, you see tons and tons of ASM 6s every week, here at the 4.0, 3.5, 3.0, 2.5, 2.0 going up for sale time and time again. You actually do see, 5.0s and 4.5s also going up time and time again because there is still like a high kind of census at 228 and 234 respectively. But generally speaking, from a bird's eye view, you can see that, if you go up to the 5.5 here with a census of 161, which is higher than, the census curve for this particular book, the 30-day moving is still in that $1,320 level. Whereas you go below the census curve at the 4.0 level, well, what do you see? Well, 30-day moving, there hasn't been any. But if you see the 3.5, you're at 840, then 3.0 is 780, then 2.5 is 750, then 2.0 is 817, and then 1.8 is 900. So you can see that, it's a lot more of a Wild West all of a sudden when you're below that grade census curve because there's just that many more copies that are coming onto market. So I kind of felt like if I could get to the 4.5 level, that sort of mitigates my risk that there's not going to be so many books that week after week after week are coming to market. Now, I just kind of wanted to hammer this point home with a couple more books that I can kind of demonstrate to you guys with the census curve here. This is, of course, Fantastic Four #52, first appearance of the Black Panther. You guys know this book, but let's go down here and see which grade has the highest number of books on the census. And it's actually, if you go down to the 6.5 grade, this is where you'll see 560 on the census. This is the grade point that has the most. Now there's, a few different ones here. The 5.0 has 552, 4.5 has 532, but it starts to drop down a little bit once you get above 6.5. Here at the 7.0, you have 425, 7.5, 360, 275, 193, etc. And what do you notice here with the values for this book? Well, at the medium value, at the 6.5 grade that has the highest census, you see that the 30-day moving average is 1189, and that's similar to the 6.0, which is 1112, and then it's even close to the 5.5, which is 930. But what happens when you go just 1 point above where the census drops down? At the 30-day moving for the 7.0, you're at 1739. Now that of course could have a lot to do with just grade psychology. A lot of people just want a 7.0 in their collection versus the 6.5, but I think a lot of it also has to do with the census curve. Now similarly with Fantastic 448, let's do the same exercise here. We go down to the 4.5 of this book and we see that the census is 689. So this seems to be the grade point that has the most out there in the market. And what do you notice about the 30-day moving for this? Well, it's at 1320, and then below that at the 4.0, it's at 1339, and then it drops off at 3.5 at 1147. But 1 point just above the census curve for this one at the 5.0, it seems like this book is holding pretty strong at the 1927 level, and at the 5.5 also at the 1906 level. Now again, that could also have to do with grade psychology, but I think generally speaking what you're seeing is that, the more books that just exist out there that happen to come onto market, if you're a book at the 4.5 range for FF48, There's just always going to be people that are selling, their copies week to week to week. And that means it's always going to open itself up for an opportunity for that book to sell under market, or for people to, just not be paying attention that particular week because, it's not that special that a 4.5 goes on to auction. And in that scenario, you're actually inviting some risk into the values of that book if there is not a buyer who's willing to pay whatever the market price of it is in that particular auction. And that's kind of why I think it's really interesting to focus on things like the grade curve. If you're somebody out there who just sort of wants to protect the value of your book, or you want to just make sure that for the most part, it's not going to go that much further down, because if there just aren't as many copies that can be listed, you will never get undercut on your values, or there will never be one that slips through the cracks and creates that kind of downward pressure on the fair market value. But at the end of the day, I'm super happy to have traded up to this 4.5 grade right here. Really, really nice presenting 4.5. Anyways, that's all for this video. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about that census curve idea? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next video.